We need to preserve that and our uniqueness at all costs. Thank you, Mr Chairman, for your indulgence.
Gareth Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Chair. When the Minister's and the Chair is not calling people numpty, she's misleading the House when it comes to the allegations that I was belittling our treaty history. Now, Mr Chair, I wasn't intending to take a call on this committee stage, but I just...
Point of order, Honourable Junior.
I take exception being told that I misled the House.
I'm not sure that is... I'm not sure I'm going to uphold that point of order. That's quite a frequent statement.
Okay, we'll do it then. Okay.
Thank you, Mr Chair, because I don't want to make a personal explanation, but I do want to explain where I'm coming from as an individual member in this House when it comes to the treaty in relation to this bill. Because obviously in subsequent calls I've argued, I believe passionately, for a change of our constitutional arrangement for a New Zealand head of state, which is different to what we see with the new provisions in this law. And I acknowledged in my contribution the role of the treaty. Now, Mr Speaker, what I want to see is a genuine treaty conversation in New Zealand about how do we actually celebrate it, how do we educate it about it, how do we actually bring it into effect?
Point of order. The Honourable Toe Henry.
Speaker, this bill is not this bill before us is not about a republic. Is not about. It has nothing to do with the republic issue, and so I would like you to bring him back to what's actually in the bill.
That's a valid point of order, and sometimes there is kind of a comparative thing made, and I would ask the member to come back to the substance of the bill.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Now, in the clause of this bill, we see the changes to the royal succession for female babies. Now, Mr Speaker, we've heard from the Minister's Chair, from other members, the role of the treaty in the constitutional relationship the Queen of England has with the Queen of New Zealand. Now, I want to point out, Mr Speaker, when you look at those treaty relationships brought up by the Minister, I was making the point that, in fact, under the Statute of Westminster in 1947, the Crown has not been the monarch, Elizabeth Windsor. The Crown has been the New Zealand Parliament and the New Zealand Governor-General. This is my point, Mr Speaker. The Minister is a lawyer. She should be aware of these points. Now, Mr Speaker, I'm not belittling the history of the treaty. What I'm saying is that I'm excited about the opportunity from this bill that we can actually have a constitutional debate. How do we best reflect the treaty? How do we best bring it into effect? I raised a suggestion around the idea of an upper house, a treaty house, a chamber. I don't believe that's belittling the treaty. I believe that is actually looking to the future. Now, I acknowledge the concerns because the treaty was a historic, unprecedented activity in global history, obviously of great importance to both Māori and Pakeha and all cultures enshrined in New Zealand. It is something special which only occurred down here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I have a different opinion to the colleague sitting next to me in the chair and no doubt many other members. I do not believe the fact it was signed by Governor Hobson on behalf of an 18-year-old Queen Victoria that it has to be put on ice forever. I believe constitutional arrangements can change, but at its heart, and as a party who has the Tītaritia Waitangi enshrined in its charter, in the heart of our party, what I couldn't countenance is changing our constitutional arrangements and lessening the role of the treaty. What I am merely portraying, and I'm not belittling the treaty, I'm merely portraying that I believe our constitutional arrangements have been put on ice. We could actually do further, do better, learn more about Tītaritia Waitangi if we actually embraced it and went forward with a genuine conversation around our head of state. And obviously, Mr Speaker, what I want to see is a genuine treaty relationship. Now, I'm obviously of Pakeha descent. My father immigrated from Wales. All of my two kids now have the blood of England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. It's only taken 200 years for all the nations of the United Kingdom to be found in New Zealand, literally the other side of the world. I'm fortunate to have grown up in Gisborne. Unfortunate to have not had very little to no historical education in school or training. I think it's a great tragedy we don't teach our kids about history and the treaty. And Mr Speaker, I want to finish on a final point, which is if we're going to be talking about the treaty, we also have to have a conversation about tēnā rangatiratanga. And Mr Speaker, if you look at the New Zealand history, this wasn't seeded in a treaty. This was ceded at the point of a musket. When you look at what happened on the beach at Te Ranganui-a-Kiwa in Gisborne, the first contact between James Cook and Tamaro ended in bloodshed and nails left on a corpse. Mr. Speaker, let's have a genuine conversation about the treaty. Let's not throw out allegations about belittling history, as we saw from the Minister of the Chair. Let's actually have a conversation, and let's have a conversation how we can improve Te Tiriti a Waitangi with a new Indigenous Pacific-centred constitutional arrangement for Aotearoa New Zealand.
The question is that parts 1 and 2 and clauses 1 and 2 stand apart. Those of that opinion will say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
33 votes in favour.
Green Party.
14 abstentions.
New Zealand First.
7 in favour.
Māori Party. Mana.
1 abstention.
Act New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 abstention.
The ayes are 104, abstentions are 16. The motion is agreed to. I will report this bill without amendment.
Members, the House is resumed. Mr Chairman.
Mr Speaker, the committee has considered the Royal Succession Bill and reports it without amendment. Mr Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The bill is set down for third reading forthwith. The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Royal Succession Bill be now read a third time.